Good morning. It's Wednesday. I'm Wayne. Welcome to Wednesdays with Wayne, brought to you by the Real Estate Business School, where you get your license and learn to use it. What does that mean? Your license guarantees you nothing. It's only the entry fee you pay to get into the business. It does not give you the skills to be successful in the business. Real estate is not a career. It's a business. If you don't treat it like a business and run it like a business, you'll soon be out of business. As proven by the statistics, 90% of the people who get in fail in their first year, even though it's the greatest business in the world. Why? Because they don't have the proper education. You need three types. The technical education to get you licensed, the business education your clients expect you to have, and a financial education to take advantage of the biggest opportunities and benefits of being a licensee in the state of Texas, and that is insider trading is legal. Now, I'm just saying that facetiously. I'm not suggesting at all by any measure that you break or even bend any rules. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that when you get licensed, you become a member of your local board. The board has a multiple listing service. What is in MLS that's so valuable? What's in there are properties that have come on the market that the public is not aware of because they're not a member of that group because they're not licensed and don't have access. So you have access to information. You're inside the information bubble. The most important thing that's in MLS are sold comparables, sold homes, sold properties. What is the value of, what is the value? What is the definition of fair market value? What a buyer would pay, what a seller would sell for. That's the definition. Neither being under duress. What are we looking for when we're investing? Duress, distressed properties. Why? We want to buy them below market. So there's an old saying, your money's made when you buy. That's one way. It's also made when you improve or develop. There's several ways to make money in real estate. The point is, it's the best business in the world. There are opportunities galore. You need the right education. So again, it's not a career, it's a business. Therefore, that's what we created, the Real Estate Business School. We created this, we named the school, we built the courses for you, and they're there to give you the three types of education. The education the Real Estate Commission requires, which is technical, which is to get your license. It's important to have this. Most of the lawsuits and complaints come from contract disputes. Some agents still have not figured out how to write a contract. So it's kind of strange in my mind because at one level, the Real Estate Commission says you can't practice law, yet we're filling out legal contracts that are binding. So whatever. I know we don't create the documents. We just help our clients fill in the blanks. But they're legally binding documents that we help them create. So nonetheless, a technical education will help you understand, because at one level it's a very technical business. Reading a pro forma requires a technical education. The engineering, the architecture, everything that goes into these homes, these buildings, this land, this development, this buying, the selling, the contracts, the closings, the financing. There's a lot to it. A lot of it's technical. It's imperative you have a technical education. My point is, I've been on hundreds of listing presentations. I've never had anyone ask me the difference between accretion and erosion. So why do I need to know that? Because that's on the state exam. So when you were a child and you went to school, all of us, we were told what to learn, and we were told when we learned it. Now you're an adult. As an adult, you can choose what you want to learn. You need to choose, who you learn it from. So if you look around, you don't like your balance sheet and you don't like your bank balance, then chances are there's something you don't know. So this is why we provide the education that's been most valuable to our graduates, and our graduation list reads like the who's who of Texas Realtors. Because simple process, get your license, learn to use it. So today, this is the learn to use it part. So thank you for showing up. I appreciate your time, and I do that because a long time ago a friend of mine told me the most valuable thing anyone can give you is their time. So thank you for your time, and I'll do my best to make sure it's well spent. Thank you for showing up. Remember, the wealth in real estate is in owning it, not listing it and selling it to someone else for 3%. or 4% or wherever the percentage is. But you're never going to get rich 3 or 4% of the time. Owning it is the key. There's a difference between people who own the home and people who invest in the home. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So I was thinking about this, and I made a list. Here are some of the reasons, or some of the differences between homeowners, owner-occupants, and investors. One is the home buyer typically asks, how much does it cost? The investor asks, how much do I make? They don't care what it costs. They care what they make. The cost is typically irrelevant if it pencils out. In other words, if an investor can acquire it, take a risk, and get a return at the end, which is the reason to do it, then typically they'll move on it if it meets their investing criteria. So the price really, I wouldn't say it's irrelevant, but whether it's 500 or 5 million, and a typical investor won't care. I mean, they care, but buyers who qualify for a $500,000 house typically won't qualify for a $2 million house. For an investor, there's no difference, right? 500,000, 5 million. The price matters in relation to the income, but not as to affordability, because they're not paying for it. The tenants do, right? So when the investors say, ask how much does it make, that's what I'm referring to. There's no limit on their borrowing capacity. The other thing that buyers ask is, buyers will live in the home. Investors live off the home, which means the income it produces. Buyers are typically going to ask, how much are the payments? And your investors are going to typically ask, how much are the rents? I heard buyers say, early on before I knew better, I put buyers in my car and driving me around, waiting for them to say, stop, I'll take this one. What a mistake. Never put a buyer in your car. I'm talking to you realtors out there. Never put a buyer in your car unless they have an address and cash. If you're going to drive it around for money, at least get paid. Put an Uber sign on your car and get it over with. The buyers walk in, they look at the house and they go, it needs work, keep looking. And the investor walks into the house and goes, holy mackerel, this needs work. It's perfect. Buyers are going to say, show me some homes. The investors say, show me some numbers. This is what I mean by technical education. If you don't know how to fill out an APOD or annual property operating data form, and you can't put a pro forma together and show them the return, what types of returns there are, and what they're going to get in each type of return. For example, what's the cash on cash return? A lot of people say ROI, but what they often leave out is there are different types of ROIs, different kinds of ROI. My question is, what kind of ROI are you referring to? I had a marketing guy that, I spend $30,000 a month on pay-per-click. He'd make me 32 and tell me how great it was doing. I'm like, what? I put 30,000 at risk, you made me $2,000? No, that's crazy. And it's not over 100% ROI. That's an investing term. It's got nothing to do with PPC. PPC should be measured on a multiple, 2, 3, 4, 5 times the spend. You spend 30, you should get 150. Not get your money back. That's not an investment. That's return of investment, not return on investment. 2,130 is barely calculable. That's crazy. So what I'm saying is there's a way to make huge returns with minimal risk, but you've got to have a technical education. So the other thing that, buyers are going to ask is, how much are the taxes? Again, the investor says, what's the ROI? What's my cash on cash? What's my internal rate? What's my cap rate? What's my GRM? The buyer pays for the home. For the investor, the tenant pays for the home. Please hear me on this. Tenants pay for the home. I've asked people, why don't you invest? I was at a social event last week, and it was interesting. The conversation involved to real estate, because it's a huge subject. A lot of people I know own it. Some people own a lot of it. And this one character was talking about how much money he made, how much equity he had in his house. I said, wow, good for you. That's great. Just think what would happen if you own 10. He goes, 10? I can't afford more than one house. I'm like, oh, that's too bad. You're not paying for it. You have a tenant. Everything you own. Look, I said it before, I'm going to say it again. When's the only time in your life you ever borrow money? When is the only time in your life when you ever borrow money? When someone else pays it back. Well, everything you own should be paid for by someone else, either a tenant, a customer, or the government. Stop working so hard. It's a highly overrated activity, and it will not make you rich. So the buyer buys a home to live in. Investors will never live in the homes they buy. Buyers buy using emotion. Investors buy using logic, numbers, pro formas, APODs. For the buyer, the property is a liability. For the investor, the property is an asset. And this goes back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you haven't read the book, read it. It's a good primer. It'll get you started. But in there, Kiyosaki says, asset is something that creates cash flow, puts money in your pocket. Liability takes money out of your pocket. So when you buy a home, in other words, he would say an asset feeds you by producing cash flow, putting money in your pocket. Liabilities eat you by taking away your cash flow, taking money out of your pocket. So when you buy a property and you own it personally, you live in it, does it produce cash flow? Does it put money in your pocket or take it out? It takes it out. Ergo, liability. If it puts it in, asset. I know. Argue with somebody else somewhere else. Do what you want. I'm just saying. That's how it works. I get this grief all the time. Your house is an asset. It's the biggest asset you have. Mine's paid for. You still have taxes. You still have insurance. You still have maintenance. You're writing checks. If you own it, you're paying. Unless you have a tenant. Okay. Thanks for listening. I finally developed a saying for this over the years. You ever get tired of arguing with people? You ever get tired of just people that just don't listen and just are so invested in their point of view that they just want to argue for the sake of arguing? Okay, here's what gets me through that. There's two things. First one is this. Oh, this is funny. This is actually a gift from Robert Kiyosaki. He gave it to me years ago. He says, this is cool. Can you read this? There's a javelina hog. It says, don't teach pigs to sing. It wastes your time and it annoys the pig. So I'll tell you, when someone starts arguing with me, don't teach them to sing. Put the baton down and walk away. No. The other one I heard is, it suddenly occurred to me, I was saying, this person is such an idiot. They're such an idiot. I can't believe they're such an idiot. And suddenly I realized I was arguing with them. So, like, whoa. You know what you get when you argue with an idiot, right? Two idiots. Don't be the other idiot. Anyway, he showed me how much heck when he got in his house. This is the best asset ever. I said, okay, why don't you own 10? I'm like, no matter what I say, he's going to argue with me. I think I'll move over there to that group. So, a homeowner, a buyer, cannot deduct improvements from their income tax, but investors can. The buyers pay for improvements by working and from the job, right, the income. Investors pay for improvements from rental income. Buyers pay for the home from their job, and the investor pays for the home from the cash flow. Buyers, you have depreciation, right? There's three kinds of depreciation. And depreciation means the land typically goes up in value, but the improvements, the property, the buildings, the structures don't. They decrease in value, they wear out, they fall apart, if someday they fall down if they're not maintained properly. You see it all the time as you drive through the country, barns falling down, old farmhouses falling down, but the land is going up in value. So the IRS says you can depreciate the cost of the improvements. So even though overall the property goes up, you can depreciate part of it. So you have three types of depreciation. You have the normal depreciation, you have accelerated depreciation, and bonus depreciation. That's another topic for another day, but if you're investing, and I hope you are, you should learn about these three types of depreciation, because the faster you depreciate, the more cash flow it will provide you in years one, and if you do it properly, over the years. So task for today, learn the difference between regular appreciation, accelerated depreciation, and bonus depreciation. You'll be glad you did. So the buyer can't deduct the depreciation of their home from their income tax. Investors can depreciate using all three methods I just described. The IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, does not reward homeowners for buying the home, but they do reward the investors. And the last thing is, when the buyers buy a home, it's to raise children, and investors buy homes to raise rents. That's a good one right there. That's it for today. Short, sweet. Thank you for joining Wishes with Wayne, presented by the Real Estate Business School, where you get your license and learn to use it. This, ladies and gentlemen, was the learn to use it part. Have a great day. I'll see you next week at 9.